What if a woman in sweatpants walked into a luxury bank, sis, and was thrown out before they realized she owned it? They laughed at her, mocked her, called security, all because she didn't look rich enough. But when her husband walked in, and revealed who she really was, every smug smile disappeared. Keep watching, because the moment they beg for forgiveness is nothing compared to what she says next. The revolving glass doors whispered open as Sophie Carter stepped into the gleaming marble lobby of EverTrust Bank, her gray sweatpants soft against her legs, hoodie sleeves pushed up to her elbows, hair tied in a loose bun that had no interest in perfection. She looked out of place instantly, not because she was out of line, but because the room had already decided she didn't belong. Everyone inside was polished, pressed, and perfumed, designers on their bodies, titles in their mouths. A receptionist blinked twice as Sophie approached, her eyes scanning from scuffed sneakers to plain fingernails with no rings, no makeup, no status. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked flatly, already assuming she couldn't. "I'd like to access my account," Sophie replied calmly. "There's a private vault linked to it." The woman didn't even fake a smile. "Private vaults are for platinum tier clients only. That's not on your level. Please check with the teller line. Over there." Her hand gestured dismissively. Two suited men waiting nearby exchanged amused glances. One of them whispered, "Lost." "Looks like she came to pick up her welfare check." Sophie heard it. She heard it all. Every word, every unspoken tone laced with judgment. Still, she walked toward the teller line, head high, eyes forward, heart steady, like a woman who had nothing to prove but everything to remember. Sophie stood in line, her fingers curled tightly around the strap of her canvas bag. The only sound in her ears, the soft murmur of banking transactions and the click of designer heels echoing behind her. The man ahead of her was greeted with warmth, a smile, even a joke about stock tips. When Sophie stepped forward, the teller's demeanor shifted instantly. Face blank, voice robotic. Name? Sophie gave it. Photo ID. She handed it over. The teller stared at it, then at her clothes, then at her. "This account, you sure this is yours?" The question wasn't procedural. It was accusatory. Sophie felt her cheeks warm, but her voice stayed level. "Yes, I'd like access to the private vault connected to it." The teller raised an eyebrow. "That's handled upstairs. I'll need to verify some things." She walked off with Sophie's ID without another word. From behind, a low snicker. A woman in a blazer muttered to her friend, "She's either confused or criminal." A teenage boy near the waiting area raised his phone discreetly and started filming. "Check this out," he whispered. "This lady just rolled in wearing sweatpants, asking for the vault." He posted it instantly with the caption, "Rich in delusion." The comments rolled in security risk. "Homeless Karen. She thinks it's 7-Eleven." Sophie shifted her weight from one foot to the other, aware of every stare now. A man in a Rolex stood nearby, pretending to check his watch while watching her like she was a bug on his windshield. The receptionist glanced over and pressed something beneath her desk. Within minutes, a uniformed security guard approached casually, hands behind his back, smiling in that fake, condescending way. "Ma'am, are you lost? This area's for members only." "I'm a member," Sophie answered. "I've been one for years." "Sure," the guard said, nodding like he was humoring a child. "Let's just keep things calm." "All right," from the corner. A woman began filming too. "OMG, she's still here," she giggled. "Drama at EverTrust." Another teller returned with Sophie's ID, waving it like it didn't belong in her hand. "We couldn't find your name linked to any high-tier access," she said coldly. Maybe there was a mistake. Sophie's patience cracked slightly, just enough to show steel underneath. "There is no mistake. I need someone from upper management." The teller rolled her eyes. "Upper management is very busy." "Then I'll wait," Sophie said simply, and sat down on one of the pristine lobby chairs. Quietly, defiantly, in sweatpants that had just become the most uncomfortable outfit in the city. 30 minutes passed, then 40, then 50. No one returned, no one addressed her. They left Sophie sitting there like a stain on polished marble, an inconvenience no one wanted to claim. A mother with a stroller gave her a wary glance before choosing a different seat. A businessman stepped close enough to mutter, "If you don't have money, don't waste people's time." His voice was loud enough for others to hear, soft enough for plausible deniability. Sophie sat still, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her back straight like it was all she had left to lean on. The receptionist whispered into her headset. Two security guards reappeared, this time with stiff shoulders and stone faces. The taller one cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to leave." Sophie looked up slowly. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm waiting for someone from management." "You're disturbing the environment," the second guard said flatly. "This is a private banking institution. You're not properly dressed. You're not cooperating. And you're making customers uncomfortable." "I'm sitting silently," Sophie replied. "And I am a customer." "Ma'am," the taller one repeated, this time placing a hand on her arm. "Stand up." People turned. Phones were already out. Sophie stood slowly, her voice calm but firm. "You're making a mistake. We'll be the judge of that," the guard said as he took her arm more firmly. She didn't fight. She didn't scream, but her eyes locked on the staff around her. Melinda, the branch manager, was watching from the top of the staircase, arms folded, lips pursed in smug satisfaction. "Escort her out," Melinda said coldly. "She doesn't belong here." The words echoed through the vaulted ceilings like a verdict. Cameras flashed. A child asked his mother, "Why are they kicking her out?" The mother didn't answer. Sophie was walked across the marble floor like a criminal, Sweatpants swishing softly with each step. No one offered her help. No one offered her dignity. At the door, just before being pushed outside, she turned once more. Not in anger, not in fear, but with a kind of haunting calm. The same calm before a storm has before it strikes. And then, without a word, she was gone. Or so they thought. Outside, the sun hit her skin like judgment. Sophie stood beneath the Evertrust Bank logo. The reflection of the glass walls behind her distorted just enough to make the whole building feel warped, unreal. She reached into her canvas bag, pulled out her phone, and pressed a single name on the screen. Her voice was steady, barely above a whisper. "They refused to let me access the vault." That's all she said. No anger, no tears, just a quiet sentence with the weight of a wrecking ball. She ended the call and waited. Minutes passed, then the sound, low and smooth, the tires glided against pavement. Heads turned. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom, polished to mirror perfection, pulled up to the curb like it had no intention of ever stopping. The driver in white gloves stepped out and opened the rear door, and out came Daniel Carter. Tailored charcoal suit, silver cufflinks, no smile, just eyes like steel that sliced through glass and bone. The moment he stepped onto the sidewalk, time bent. People inside the bank pressed against the windows. The guards at the entrance stiffened. The receptionist's headset slipped slightly as her mouth fell open. Melinda, still on the stairs, took one step back. Daniel didn't run. He walked. Every step was silent, deliberate, and final. The doors slid open for him without resistance. No one asked his name. No one dared. He passed through the lobby like it belonged to him. First, because it did. Staff straightened themselves instinctively. Tellers stopped mid-sentence. Phones were lowered. Even the air felt different, heavier. At the center of the marble floor, Daniel stopped and looked directly at Melinda. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Where is my wife?" he asked, calm as a blade. Melinda blinked, lips parting with a stutter. "I didn't realize." "No," Daniel cut in. "You didn't ask?" He turned toward the guards. "And you, who touched her?" Silence. The taller guard swallowed hard. "Sir, we were told she was causing what Daniel's voice was ice." She waited. She asked. She gave you every chance to act with decency. His gaze swept the room, and for the first time all day, the bank was silent. Not because of policy, but because the truth had entered the room. "You didn't see Sweatpants," he said. "You saw status. You saw a woman you thought you could ignore, dismiss, remove." He paused. "And you were wrong." Then, without waiting for permission, he walked back to the glass doors, opened them himself, and extended his hand to Sophie. She stepped in, not as a woman thrown out, but as one being returned to her rightful place. And for everyone inside, reality had just flipped upside down. The lobby that once buzzed with whispers now drowned in silence so dense it felt like pressure against the chest. Sophie stepped in beside Daniel, her sweatpants unchanged, her expression calm, but there was something different in her walk now, something deliberate, poised, unshakable. Daniel didn't look left or right. He led her to the exact desk where she'd been ignored, his voice measured. "This is my wife. You dragged her out of our bank." Melinda stood frozen. "I didn't know," she stammered. She didn't identify herself properly. There was no appointment, and the way she was dressed. "Dressed," Daniel echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Are we gauging human worth by fabric now? Is that the bar we've set?" The staff behind the counters shifted uncomfortably. No one dared defend themselves. He turned to the security guards. "You put your hands on her." The taller one nodded slowly, eyes lowered. Daniel spoke again, quieter this time, deadlier. "You laid hands on the woman who co-owns this building, on the legal partner of the vault division that funds your salaries, on the person whose name is on the lease agreement above your head." A collective gasp moved through the lobby like a wave. A teller dropped a pen. Someone whispered, "She owns the bank." Daniel stepped aside. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Let them hear it from you." Sophie took a single step forward and faced Melinda directly. "I wasn't looking for special treatment," she said, voice steady. "I came for what I had every right to access. You didn't even ask for my name. You just looked at me and decided I wasn't worthy of standing on this floor." Melinda's face drained of color. She tried to recover. "We can resolve this privately." "No," Daniel said. "You made it public. You made a scene. Let everyone see how we clean it up." He looked at the guards. "You're both dismissed. Effective immediately." Then to Melinda, "You're suspended pending a formal ethics hearing. Leave your badge and step away from the desk." She hesitated. "Daniel, please. That's Mr. Carter to you." She flinched. Her hands shook as she unpinned her name tag, placing it down like it was a piece of broken glass. She walked toward the door, heels echoing through the now silent lobby. People stepped aside as she passed, no one meeting her eyes. Sophie didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply turned toward the elevator, Daniel at her side. As the doors slid open, she glanced once over her shoulder at the stunned faces frozen behind glass, the same ones that had judged her, the same ones who now realize, you never know who you're throwing out. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, except for the soft hum of ascent. Sophie stood still beside Daniel, her hands now calm, no longer clenched. As the doors opened to the executive suite, the atmosphere shifted again. Sleek hallways lined with frosted glass, abstract art on the walls, and assistants who stood immediately when they saw her. No more whispers, just reverence. Daniel opened a glass door marked Vault Operations, restricted access, and gestured her in. "It's time," he said. Inside, a long mahogany table stretched beneath soft golden lights. 2 legal associates, the vault director, and a compliance officer rose to their feet as Sophie entered. The director smiled nervously. "We're honored to have you here in person. Mrs. Carter, you're already familiar with the protocol," said one of the lawyers. "Would you like to authorize with your biometric or signature?" Today, Sophie walked to the head of the table, pulled out a pen, and signed a document labeled Ownership Confirmation, Division 6. Beneath her name, Sophie Carter. Primary stakeholder, International Vault Division. A teller's face appeared outside the glass walls, watching in disbelief. Sophie turned. "Bring them in," she said. Moments later, the very receptionist who had dismissed her, along with 2 stunned tellers, were escorted into the room. One tried to speak. "We didn't know." But Sophie raised a hand. "You didn't care to know. That's the difference." Daniel approached and placed something on the table. Oh, a sleek black security badge with a platinum seal. He slid it across to Sophie. "This grants you unrestricted access to every EverTrust facility worldwide. No more waiting. No more asking." She picked it up. "It's weight satisfying, symbolic. I never needed permission," she said quietly. I only forgot how much power I had." She turned to the stunned staff. "I wasn't angry because I was denied access. I was angry because you felt comfortable denying me dignity." One of the woman's eyes welled with tears. "We're so sorry." Sophie nodded, then looked through the glass wall toward the bank floor below. "People think wealth is measured in zeros, but it's measured in how you treat someone when you think they have none." And with that, the doors opened behind her, and not to exile this time, but to respect. Her silence earlier had been mistaken for weakness. Now, it echoed like thunder. Daniel and Sophie descended back into the lobby. Not as a couple walking through a bank, but as two forces rebalancing the scales. By the time they reached the floor, the whispers had shifted from judgment to awe. Every employee stood frozen at their stations as Daniel raised a hand, signaling for the floor manager to gather the staff. A sharp chime echoed through the speaker system. All employees to the main lobby immediately. Within minutes, the front area was full. Tellers, supervisors, loan officers, even interns lining up like school children caught in the act. Sophie stood beside Daniel, expression composed, not cold, but resolute. Daniel spoke first. What happened today was not a mistake. It was a mirror. And what we saw in that mirror was a culture of assumption, of superiority, of casual cruelty. He pointed toward the security footage being projected silently on a side screen. Sophie sat patiently, ignored, and was then escorted out while others smirked in the background. This isn't about one employee. This is about what you've allowed this institution to become when no one was watching. Murmurs rippled. No one defended themselves now. No one dared. "We don't run a fashion boutique. We run a financial institution," Daniel continued. "Our clients come from every walk of life. They deserve dignity whether they wear Armani or cotton fleece." He pulled out a printed list. Effective immediately 9 dismissals, 3 disciplinary reviews, full diversity and empathy retraining across every department. Gasps rose. One teller burst into tears, but no one argued. Then Sophie stepped forward. Her voice was softer than Daniel's, but somehow cut deeper. "I wasn't angry you didn't recognize me. I was heartbroken that you didn't even try, that when you saw someone you thought was beneath you, your instinct wasn't to help. It was to humiliate." Her words landed like bricks, but there was one exception. She turned her gaze to a quiet janitor near the back. Eddie, who had offered her water during her wait, and whispered, "Don't let them get to you." Sophie smiled gently. "Eddie, please come forward." Shocked, he stepped up, broom still in hand. Daniel looked him in the eye. "You saw a human being, not a dress code, not a headline, just a person. And that's exactly what we need more of." Sophie handed him a crisp envelope. "You're now the new guest relations supervisor." "Oh, starting today." Eddie's jaw dropped. The staff applauded, some reluctantly, others in genuine agreement. And as Sophie looked around the room, she saw it, the shift. The lesson is taking root. She didn't need revenge. She'd already won. That evening, as twilight painted the city gold, Sophie stood before a crowd of reporters and cameras just outside the bank's grand entrance. A press conference had not been scheduled. But it was inevitable. The video of her being escorted out had already gone viral. Now, the world demanded to hear from the woman in sweatpants who owned the bank. The microphones clicked on. The silence was electric. Sophie stood alone at the podium. No security detail. No press manager. Just her gray hoodie, her calm eyes, and a truth that could no longer be ignored. "I walked into a bank I helped build," she began, "and was treated like a trespasser because I didn't look the part, because I didn't perform wealth the way people expect it to be worn." Her voice was soft, but no one dared interrupt. "But I didn't come here to shame anyone. I came to remind us all that kindness is not a luxury. It is a responsibility." Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned in. "Today, I was judged for what I wore. But the truth is, every day, someone is denied dignity because they don't fit a mold. And it doesn't just happen in banks. It happens in schools, in lobbies, on sidewalks, to the elderly, the disabled, the poor, the quiet, the different." Her eyes scanned the crowd. "So, If my sweatpants make you uncomfortable, ask yourself, why? What have we been taught to believe about people who don't shine on the surface? She paused, letting the silence settle in their hearts. This building may bear my name in legal ink, but the real power isn't in the title. It's in the choices we make when no one's watching. The live stream numbers exploded. Celebrities reposted her quotes. Activists called it the most important speech since viral videos began replacing headlines. Sophie stepped down without taking questions. She didn't need to explain further, because that night, millions of people didn't just hear her story, or they saw their own in it. And for the first time in a long time, someone had said it loud enough for the world to stop and actually listen. 2 weeks later, the EverTrust branch looked different, not because of marble or lighting, but because of the way people moved inside it. The silence once born of superiority had been replaced by respect. Conversations were warmer, eyes more alert, and posture less rehearsed. Behind the counter, Eddie stood in a crisp navy blazer, proudly wearing his new name tag, Guest Relations Supervisor. He greeted each client with a sincerity that couldn't be taught. Because he didn't perform hospitality, he embodied it. That morning, the double doors opened again, and a young woman entered. Skinny jeans, faded sneakers, hair tied in a loose scarf. Her name was Rosa, a single mother of 2 who had been denied at other branches, too embarrassed to ever try again. She clutched a small envelope in her hand, shaking slightly. From behind the counter, a teller started to frown. But Eddie stepped forward before the air could turn cold. "Welcome to EverTrust," he said with a warm smile. "How can I assist you today?" Rosa blinked, startled by the kindness. I wanted to ask about a savings plan, but I wasn't sure if I qualified." Eddie motioned her to a private desk. "Let's find out together. Everyone qualifies for dignity here." From the upstairs balcony, Sophie watched through the glass. She didn't speak. She didn't wave. She simply placed her hand over her heart and nodded. In her office sat a stack of letters, ennui emails, messages, handwritten notes, from people all over the world, nurses, veterans, teenagers, refugees, all saying the same thing. "Thank you. You made me feel seen." One letter came from a teacher in Detroit after showing your story to my class. One of my students wore sweatpants for the first time and said, "If she can change the world, so can I." Sophie folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer labeled "Keep Going" downstairs. Rosa laughed softly at something Eddie said, and in that moment, Sophie knew this wasn't just her redemption story. It was a ripple, one kindness at a time, rewriting the way the world measures worth. The afternoon sun slanted through the floor to ceiling windows of EverTrust Bank, casting long amber shadows across the freshly polished marble. Sophie stepped into the lobby, not in a suit, not in designer heels, but in her favorite gray sweatpants, hoodie sleeves once again pushed casually to her elbows. And this time, no one looked twice. A teller smiled and nodded respectfully. A security guard, new, trained, attentive, held the door open for an elderly client and waved cheerfully to Sophie as she passed. The space felt lighter now, not because the architecture had changed, but because the hearts inside it had. She walked toward the back hallway, past the velvet ropes and biometric scanners, and stopped at a private vault. A single beep, a flash of light, and the door clicked open. Inside was a simple box. No gold, no jewels, just a folded note, yellowed slightly with time. Sophie opened it slowly and read the line she'd written to herself years ago, when she was still learning how to believe in her own voice. If the world can't see your worth, don't shout louder. Make shine quieter. She smiled. Behind her, Daniel appeared, silent and proud. "It's been quite a month," he said softly. "It's been a lifetime," she replied, then turned to him with calm eyes and fire in her voice. "But I finally know who I am. Not because they threw me out, but because they couldn't keep me out." They walked out together, past rows of employees who now greeted her, not because of fear or obligation, but because they had learned. And just outside the bank, a little girl holding her mother's hand whispered, "Mom, she looks like me." The mother nodded. And one day, you'll look like her. They judged her by her clothes. They humiliated her for looking out of place. But she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She rose. With grace, power, and a truth they couldn't erase. This isn't just her story. It's a reminder that dignity isn't worn. It's lived. If this made your heart burn or your soul rise, share it, because someone you love might be quietly carrying the same kind of power, and the world needs to stop overlooking the ones who already shine.